Hello, everybody. This is Al. We're back here with you for yet another episode of the Expat Hour. I'm here with Andrew Vasquez, and one thing that we want to talk about today is a very disappointing social life in the United States, in particular, how bad the dating life is for so many young American men, for everybody, really. The dating apps have ruined the experience for a lot of people. Andrew, now you've lived in the US your whole life. Have you noticed a pretty steep decline in the quality of your social life and in particular for your dating experiences in the United States?
Across the whole young people around the country have all experienced this. And right now, I was just pulling up a study here on my phone. People are actually reporting record amounts of loneliness. The marriage rates are the lowest that they have ever been within recorded history. And recently, one of our fellow podcasters, Aaron Clary, was actually doing a long video response to a question that his viewers sent in to him. And that is the future of dating apps here in the United States. And this is interesting. This is something that I think is worth talking about for our audience that's considering leaving the United States for the purpose of potentially finding a more traditional partner outside of the US. So right now, dating apps here in the United States are facing a sharp decline in popularity and revenue. Here are a couple of the reasons cited as to why this is the case. There's a decrease in downloads. So people by and large are not having as much success on these dating apps as they were back around the year 2014, 2015 when these apps first came out. Men are reporting a severe dissatisfaction with these apps in that they're not getting any matches. So there's been a decrease in revenue. The market value of Bumble and Match Group has dropped by more than $40 billion since 2021. There's been a sharp decrease in willingness to pay. The number of paying users for Match Group has declined for 4 consecutive quarters, over a whole year. Increased disillusionment. This is a big one, Al. This is a big one for members of our audience that are tuning in today. People are calling each other more, increased disillusionment. So users are frustrated with the amount of time it takes to sort through profiles and get a match that ultimately leads to an actual date. So not just getting that seldom match, but having one of those seldom matches actually lead to something meaningful. Increased interest in offline alternatives. This is a big deal. People are moving away from the virtual reality of things and going back to more organic connections. So people are calling each other more, sending voice notes, reading books, meeting up in person. Other contributing factors. The paid subscription model is not ideal for most people. The near monopoly that dating apps have had over the dating world is providing a lot of trouble. The app's designed to hold users' attention, which can distance behavior from values. And of course, the app's failure to woo Generation Z. These are all things that are leading to a lot of dissatisfaction here in the dating market in the United States. Al, we're talking about this because a lot of the clients that you and I work with for the purpose of coming up with a plan for expatriation, a plan for leaving the United States, are very dissatisfied with their romantic life, so to speak, here in the U.S. You've had a very interesting experience overseas with your dating life, Al. You've also been somebody who lived for many years and dated here in the U.S. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your experience thus far?
Well, I first came to Mexico in 2019, and the first thing I noticed immediately is that I got 10 times as many matches immediately. So why is that? Well, first of all, an American expat in a relatively low-income country will be of higher status. Secondly, there is status attached to being exotic, being different, being from a culture that has some advantages over the local culture. You see, country self-esteem plays a big role here. In American, we tend to look down upon immigrants. The dating value of an immigrant is very low. But see, an immigrant usually is somebody who's from a less advantaged country, a disadvantaged country, typically. They have to live in the United States or another wealthy country because they can't make a living. Yeah, when I came to Mexico, I was an expat. See, the expat versus immigrant is a very important distinction to keep in mind. That as an expat, I was not tied down to Mexico or any Latin American country where I lived. I was able to come and go as I pleased, and that kind of autonomy raised my status. And of course, my experience is that I got much more attention, I got better treatment, and that's a total opposite to how I was treated in the United States. That I really, in the United States, if you're an immigrant, your best bet is just to stick to your own ethnic group or date other immigrants, as you're going to be your SMV is going to be low, but not so. That's going to be reversed and flipped on its head when you go to a country like Mexico, Colombia, Paraguay, or even a Southern European country.
Okay. So, Al, in recent years, one of the big modern day popular movements that's really picked up a lot of steam is these passport bros. For members of our audience that are not familiar with the passport bros, these are a group of individuals that very specifically go overseas for the purpose of finding a wife, finding a life partner, so to speak. And there are a number of different reasons as to why they do that. We won't get into all of the reasons here in this particular episode of the Expat Hour, but suffice it to say that people at the surface may hear what we're talking about today and try to compare us to the passport bros. How are we different? How is what we're talking about in terms of expatriation a bit different than the movement of the passport bros?
Well, passport bros are exclusively relationship oriented. And not all passport bros want to find a wife. Some of them just want to have fun. But it's a very, let us say, intimacy-oriented community. We're not really focusing on that. We're talking about general expatriation issues. And of course, the social life is an important part. Often, we are social creatures, but we do so much more than that. We want to help people find a country that suits their values. We want to help people find a country where that's affordable, where it's easy to get legal papers. And then of course you want to find a country where you fit in, and that's what we have in common with the passport bro movement. We're looking to facilitate the creation of social connections, but we have a much broader scope. We're interested in much more than just social relationships.
Okay, awesome. So would it be fair to say, Al, that the average Joe here in the United States, the guy who has a regular 9-to-5 job, probably makes less than $60,000 a year, $50,000 a year, goes to work every day, pays his rent, drives an old beat up car. But I mean, they're not doing bad. They're just not doing exceptionally well. The common man, nothing wrong with the common man, but for the common man, as I've just described him, responsible, hardworking, goes to work every day, but just really isn't having all that spectacular of a social life, whether it be with family, friends, or dating. Not a whole lot of social status tied to him here in the United States, and that might be part of the reason why. Does the person that I've just described have a much better likelihood of having a better social life overseas? Can you answer that?
Well, absolutely, for the reasons I've mentioned. Whether you like it or not. One key determinant of a man's social status is his economic viability.
Okay.
And if you're making $60,000 a year in the United States, well, you're barely middle class in most states, and inflation will probably move you further down in the pecking order. Yet, if you take that income to a less prosperous country, you're going to be among the top income earners. And what's more, you're going to have an advantage over these people. You can provide an interesting lifestyle to whoever you choose as your partner. For example, travel, exposure to other cultures. While moving to the United States is not as popular of an idea as it used to be in Latin America, nonetheless, an American expat is mobile. He can not only go back to the U.S., he can live in another country, and then he can take his partner with him. Oh, that in and of itself is interesting and exciting to many potential dating prospects. You see, I'd say that certainly a guy that you described would be much more attractive in the dating market in Latin America than he would be in the United States, and he's certainly offering a much better deal than what a lot of the local guys will.
Okay, so what we've described here, just based off of our experience working with clients out, what we've described here obviously you can see the incentive for younger men, younger people in general. The digital nomad, the guy making money online who wants to take his business exclusively online and be a digital nomad. What's in this in terms of building relationships, having a social life? How does that look for somebody who's, say, for example, retired and they're doing this, they're they're leaving the US on a retirement income? What does having a social life look like for that person?
Well, I can answer that based on my experience in Mexico. The first city I lived at abroad was Puerto Vallarta, a touristy town, a resort town in Mexico. And at the time, this was still before the digital nomad era, before the pandemic. Most of the expats I met were senior citizens, and they had a great social life, even though they didn't speak any Spanish. At least most of them did not. But the reason they had a great social life is that they got to connect with like-minded people in their age group. You know that if you are a senior citizen living off Social Security in the United States, you're probably going to be out of place.
Yeah.
Now you're going to be surrounded by people who think differently, who are very, let's say, discriminatory in their social decisions. And in the United States, we're pretty segregated. We prefer to be with extremely like-minded people, and we tend to shun people who are different politically, religiously, and lifestyle preferences. And that's why I believe that's one reason we're so socially isolated. But if you're an American who lives abroad, say senior citizen, well, you're not going to be as picky. You're going to be a little bit more accepting of others because you have an incentive to do that. And what's more, you're going to meet a lot of people who have left the United States for the same reason you did, who are on the same boat as you are. You know, you are going to find a natural connection with people in your age group. And that's extremely important for your mental health as a senior citizen, to have close friendships, have people who understand and support you. You're going to be much more likely to find that abroad than you are at home in the United States.
Absolutely. If I may add this, living off of a retirement income, let's just say you're a normal individual. You spent your entire life contributing to, say, for example, Social Security, and you're living off of Social Security in your retirement. Moving to a place where that Social Security check has a lot more buying power is going to afford you a lot of different options. Give you an example of what I'm talking about. When I was very, very early on in my career, I was not making very much money. And as a result of that, I was living in a travel trailer out in the countryside, out in the middle of nowhere. And there were a lot of older people living in that area, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. And the toll that took, living out in isolation without people that shared their same value, living in that type of situation out of necessity, was a terrible mental hindrance for a lot of these people. Compare that to being able to go ahead and take your retirement income overseas, and you have a lot more options that are available to you. You've completely stacked the odds in your favor.
Absolutely. And the most important thing is not even money. It's that you're going to be around like-minded fellow expats. And that's what we're here for, the Expat Hour. To help expats find like-minded people, no matter who you are, where you're from, how old you are. If you're watching this channel, you know, your social life will be improving pretty quickly.
Al, also, can you touch on this? So we just went through the holiday season. So here in the States, the Christmas holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, those are all major holidays here in the United States. And what we're finding, all of these articles that just come out talking about, there were a record number of young people that are spending the holidays alone. They're spending the holidays without being married. They're spending the holidays without having a wife or husband or children. This is a relatively new phenomenon here in recorded history. Obviously, for reasons outside of our ability to fully address here on this show, loneliness is, for whatever reason here in the United States, becoming more and more of a major issue. Can you talk a little bit more about the importance of being able to address that by moving overseas?
Well, there's a few things going on. The United States is an extremely individualistic culture. We always have. What exacerbated that, made it more intense, is our attachment to technology. There was a wonderful book from 2000 by Robert Putnam called Bowling Alone about how technology isolates us, undermines our community. And why is that? Well, think about it. If you're a senior citizen, or even if you're just my age, you're old enough to remember what social life was back when we were teenagers. When I first went to college, I just had a MySpace account, and I used an AOL Instant Messenger, really primitive technology. I had a flip phone. And then I didn't even get a Facebook account until I graduated from college, and I was already 22 years old. Now, what did this mean? I could easily bump into somebody at a college campus or even in the supermarket, strike up a conversation, and then before you know it, you suddenly have a new acquaintance, and that blossoms into a friendship at some point. That you have these serendipitous random encounters with people. They're not forced, they're not scheduled. I never had to go on any stupid website, explaining what kind of friend I want to make. No, that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. See, now technology just makes us extremely hyper-conscious, overly selective, and who we want to hang out with. We have all these silly little filters and dating apps, my goodness. And then studies actually show that people who go on blind dates are actually just as likely to be happier with their experience as those who chose somebody in a dating app. And you even have a rent-a-friend app in the United States, believe it or not. It's crazy.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's unbelievable. In Japan, there's something called a hikikomori, a young person who does not even leave his room. And a lot of older people die alone. It's a constant problem for the emergency service people in Japan, that they find senior citizens dead alone in their home. And something similar happened to my neighbor in Michigan. He was 65. He had 3 children. He was married for 30 years. And he was well known in his community. He lived across the street from my parents. He died alone. This happens more and more. Now, in countries like Paraguay or the Philippines, it's really uncommon. The sense of community is really entrenched here. People do use technology, but technology supplements in-person relationships. In the United States, it seems to be replacing it. And that's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is obviously a problem. It's obviously something that our clients are thinking about, our audience is thinking about. So Al, what's the solution? What's the solution that we're able to provide here at the Expat Hour?
Well, first of all, put down your TikTok account. Unfortunately, TikTok has been unbanned. Great. Stop taking so many selfies. Just if you go out with somebody to hang out, just don't interrupt the conversation. Take a selfie, for crying out loud. But what the solution we're going to provide you is that we're going to help you find a community of expats. We're going to help you find a place where you can connect with locals. We'll teach you about local customs. We'll help you learn the language. In the case of Spanish and Portuguese, I'm fluent in both. I can help you find a place where you're going to be less out of place. And that's the important thing. But remember, just don't take too many selfies, because that's what ruins everybody's social life these days. TikTok is a cancer.
All right. And Al, how do our prospective clients get a hold of you?
Well, look below in the description of the video. You can book a free consultation. That's a half an hour free. After that, we'll figure out what specifically you'd like to discuss, and we'll take it from there.
Al, thank you so very much for this information. Thank you for your time. It's been very informative. Thank you to members of our audience. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you, Andrew.